Hey, we're continuing our series on Ruth today, and this has been, for me, the most fun message to prepare because it seems like every time I'm scheduled to speak, the topic I get and receive to speak on is like super heavy. Telling the church in Haggai, like, hey, you're not doing your job. You're terrible people. You know, that was my first message, okay? And then from there, it just got better. I spoke on the church in Laodicea in the Revelation series. I mean, come on, guys. Throw a guy a bone. You know, I got Ruth today and love. Hey, today's message is called The Power of Love. You know, I grew up with a single mom. Most of you know that by now. And when you grow up with a single mom, there's something that usually happens in your house in regards to the films that are chosen for a family movie night. Most of the time, it's not going to be your Marvel Avengers or your Transformers or even Star Wars. That would have been nice. I get You've Got Mail. And to this day, because of my mother's influence on me, I love chick flicks. I love chick flicks. I love romantic comedies. You've Got Mail. Has anybody seen You've Got Mail? Come on, you guys, you're blessed. Tom Hanks is like my favorite actor of all time. I've seen almost every movie he's ever been in. And honestly, it'd have to be like a really obscure movie for me not to have seen it. But in You've Got Mail, it's this really cool love story. It's interesting. And in every romantic comedy, there's a thing called the meet cute, okay? It's a part of the plot of a movie where woman meets man for the first time. And most of the time, it's like under these crazy complicated situations. So in You've Got Mail, Mr. Fox, F-O-X, meets Mrs. Shop around the corner, right? Meg Ryan. She's so good looking, you guys. I love Meg Ryan. Top Gun 2 is out now, Top Gun Maverick out, and everybody said that she makes like a surprise appearance in the movie, and I'm so stoked. We're going to see it tomorrow. It's going to be great. So they meet, and it's their meet cute, and they despise each other because he owns Fox Books with his dad, and she owns a little shop around the corner, and it's this tiny little bookstore, and Fox Books is putting her tiny little bookstore out of business, right? Well, back in the day of the early internet, we call it the BC ages of the internet, there's this thing called AOL Instant Messenger, AIM. Anybody remember that? Come on, millennials, let's go. AIM. Well, this movie shot that through the roof. Everybody had an AIM username. Mine was Mr. Cool 47. Yeah, it still applies today. I know. That was my AIM username. But what was cool about this movie is email and AIM were like the biggest things in the world at this point in time. So they meet online. And this is not like a Match.com situation where you see pictures and you have all this, I'm interested in sunset walks on the beach. I love hot espressos and really, really, really cold nights in the mountains snuggling by a fire. There's nothing like that. This is pretty much like you get to know someone because of their personality over the internet, bare bones, white text, black text on a white or black background. It's pretty much all you got. And so throughout this movie, their love story plays out through the internet and these random meetings where he's actually trying to help her set herself up with when he comes to realize it's actually himself. And he gets scared. The first time they're supposed to meet, he realizes it's her. He doesn't go in. But then like the rest of the time, he's like trying to like make himself like the real version of himself appeal to her. And then at the very end of the movie, they have their meeting. And what's that famous line? I hoped it was you. Right? They like walk in this beautiful garden setting, and Binksley, their dog, is this beautiful golden retriever because every romantic comedy needs their golden retriever. And she walks up to him and she's like, I hope it was you. I so hoped it was you. But it's what's crazy about this story is it's so beautiful at the end. But I'll tell you, there's some romantic comedies that I don't like. Hallmark. I hate Hallmark. I hate Hallmark with a passion. I think, honestly, the Antichrist is one of the writers for Hallmark. I believe it. Jesus, come save him. Like my mom and my grandma, I'm still, Christmas time rolls around, Hallmark channel is on. I'm like, dear Lord. But I love romantic comedies. But what's on Hallmark, man, that is not romantic comedies. That is the same story with different actors over and over and over and over and over again. Thank you. All right, I'll see you guys next Sunday. Have a good week. I think I got my point across. No. But love is complicated. Like in romantic comedies, real romantic comedies, not Hallmark, it's complicated. Making relationships work is complicated. If it's not a romantic relationship, loving people is hard. Right? Like, it's a choice, right? It's just one of those things where I'm going to say, like, I love you. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. So, my first point, though, is love and complication. A complication is simply defined as this. A complication is a difficult factor or issue often appearing unexpectedly, and it changes existing plans, methods, and attitudes. You guys ever have complications? If you don't, man, we need to talk because I need some of that in my life. I need like uncomplications in my life for sure. When I think of Ruth and Naomi and how their relationship started, it seemed normal, right? Mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, mother-in-law loses father-in-law. 10 years go by, daughter-in-law loses son of the mother-in-law. It's like 10 years. Naomi lost her husband, Naomi lost her husband, and then it's like, man, a valley, right? And then you come up again, you're like, man, my sons are getting married. And Pastor Jeff and I were talking, it's like this promise of like grandchildren and all these things coming. And then your two sons die. And you're, as a mother-in-law, you're left with your two daughters-in-law. And I think the thing that we have to think about is time period and emotions. In that time, if you were a woman and you were alone, you had no protection. You had no rights. You couldn't own property. You couldn't sign legal documents. And really, honestly, none of that really changed until about 1890. Isn't that crazy? But in this time period, in the Hebrew people, Ruth, in her deepest sorrow, showed the most beautiful love towards Ruth and the other daughter-in-law. She shows that in times of deep hurt and in deep loss, there is something that comes out of us that is deeper than arrangements. It's deeper than contracts and law. And that's love. You see, when people close to us die, I don't think we're ever ready for it. I don't think we're ever truly ready for it. You can know it's coming, and you're still not ready when it actually happens. And imagine being in a circumstance when you don't even know it's coming, and it happens. You're never ready. You're never ready for that. And I think about, like, The husband and the sons, all within a span of 10 years. It amazes me. The purest love shown. Naomi showed her purest love to her daughters-in-law during her deepest grief. Hey, let's dive into the word here. We're going to be in the CSB today. We're going to start in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. It says this, but Ruth replied, don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. And these are the famous words. Everyone knows these. Wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. And your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die. And there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. Love begets love. Ruth's purest love for Naomi, it's turning around here, came during her deepest grief as well. Ruth chose to keep her promise to a family that she married into. And I think even deeper than that, Ruth chose in that moment when she said, and your God will be my God. I believe, like Pastor Kenneth said, that was her salvation moment. She chose to serve a God that took her husband. Crazy. Love makes you do crazy things. You see, Ruth understood. She saw Naomi's love, and she didn't understand it because the love Naomi had only came from someone who had spent time with the Father, who understood that even though it seems like circumstances are crazy, I really truly believe this. Naomi, in that moment of her deepest grief where she says, you might as well call me miserable. My name is not Naomi anymore. She still found a way to tell her daughters-in-law, leave me. Go home. You can find husbands again. You're still young. It's amazing to me what love does to people. And I think for so long in my life, you find love, and then there's all these different types of love. You can get into the Greek explanations of eros, phileo, Philadelphia, all these different types of love. But really, they all work together. And so my second point here is love and providence. So what providence is? Providence is God's provision in the circumstances of our life. Providence is the assurance of his active and engaged presence in all matters of creation, particularly those that involve us personally. We're going to dive back into the word here. We're going to be in Ruth chapter 2. I'm going to jump around a little bit. We're going to start in verse 3. So Ruth left and entered the field to gather grain behind the harvesters. She happened to be in the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was from Elimelech's family. Boaz asked his servant who was in charge of the harvesters, who is this young woman? I like to picture him being like, who's that? You guys have all heard the stories. The Moabite women, they were like, fine, right? They were like the good-looking women. And apparently, Israelite men had a weakness for Moabite women. And so I can just see Boaz, even though he is a man of character, he's a man, he's like, who is that? I need to know this person. Then Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field, and don't leave this one. But stay here close to my female servants. See which field they're harvesting, and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men not to touch you? When you are thirsty, go and drink from the jars the young men have filled. Then we're going to jump down to verse 14 here. At mealtime, Boaz told her, come over here and have some of this bread. Dip it in the vinegar sauce. She sat beside the harvesters, and he offered her roasted grain. She ate and was satisfied and had some left over. When she got up to gather grain, Boaz ordered his young men, Let her even gather grain among the bundles, and don't humiliate her. Pull out some stalks from the bundles for her and leave them for her to gather. Don't rebuke her. When Boaz sees Ruth for the first time, he had to know more. That's their meet cute, right? He asked questions about her. Who is that? And then he asked questions from her. He treats her with respect and kindness above what was normal for that time. You know, I'm going to tell a little bit of a self-deprecating story here. Tell the story of how Jenna and I met. For those of you who don't know, Jenna is my fiance. She's beautiful. She's back there in the corner, just so you can look at her and stare at her while I tell this story. She actually tried everything she could do not to be in the room today while I tell this story, because I told her I was warning her. So I took a job at a church as kind of an interim worship leader, worship pastor. And on my first Sunday at the church, I was still getting to know a lot of people, and we all huddled up in a giant volunteer circle before service. We were a portable church. You guys know what that's like. And so I'm circled up, and I look almost directly across from me. And I just had my moment where I was like Boaz, and I was like, who is that? And so I'm just sitting there, and I think I literally just stared at her. And I'm just like, she is fine. You know? And I can't take my eyes off of her. She's wearing these boots. And I'm like, man, that's cool. I like a woman in boots. It's cool. You know? She's got her her leggings on, a baggy little shirt on. I'm like, man, she's cool. It's a cool chick, man. And I was just like, man, I got to know more about her. But guys, little confession here. I have zero game. Zero. I am clueless when it comes to the ways of women and the way they send signals. So obviously some of my friends started to notice that Jenna and I, we'd be talking, and here's just a little snippet of how terrible my game is. So Jenna and I were talking one time, and she tells me how old she is, and I was like, oh, I thought you were older. Yeah. He's a winner. He's a real winner right there. Ding, ding. Sign him up. You know? And so, I'm clueless, you guys. I have zero game when it comes to the ladies. And I'm comfortable being around women. And I think that's where people get confused, because I've actually had people challenge me on that. But you seem so comfortable. Being comfortable talking to a woman is different than having game. You know what I mean? Come on, fellas, help me out a little bit. And so, fast forward, a few months, Jenna has been giving me signs. She'll try and text me, start a conversation, and I'm just like, cool. We'll have a 2-minute conversation on text, and she's waiting for me to keep the conversation going. I'm like, okay, see you later, cool, bye. You're so pretty. All these things. And then it finally, this is the kicker. I love this. This is my favorite part of the story. I tell people this, and people are just like, oh. So Jenna brings this guy to church with her, okay? It's been about 6 months now, and she brought him just to make me jealous. His name was Carlton, y'all. I'm not making this up. His name was Carlton. She's like, well, he called himself Carl. It doesn't make it any better. Carlton, man. And so finally, one of our friends, and she always tells us we're welcome. Her name's Brittany. She comes up to me and she's like, you better get your act together, or you're going to not have the opportunity to date her. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, she likes you, you idiot. And I was like, no, there's no way. No way, you know? And so finally, under the guise of church work, I get Jenna to go out and eat with me at East Coast Wings. I'm a big spender. And so we're sitting at East Coast Wings, and I'm so nervous, y'all. Like, my heart's like about to beat out of my chest, and I'm like, I get there, and I see her come in, and I'm just like, hey. And so we're sitting at East Coast Wings. We have our dinner. We're talking about our church work that we were supposed to talk about. And I asked her, I was like, hey, can I take you out to dinner? And she's like, yeah. You guys know Jenna. She's like, you ask her if she's excited about something. She's like, sure. You know, it's just how she is. So I took her on our first date on September 4th, 2019. And we're getting married December 10th, 2022. Yeah. Your boy's got game. You know what I mean? Lock that down. All right, you know. I'm going to stop. I'm kidding. No. If you like it, then you should put a ring on it. Okay, here we go. I'll stop, okay? But seriously, you don't just love someone because of physical attraction. I am physically attracted to her. I love everything about her. But my love for her is so much more than how I think she looks. I love her because of the way she serves people. I love her because of the way she loves her family. I love her because she wants us to have more than one kid. Whew. You love someone more than the fact they just come and make you coffee every morning. You just love them, period. If your love comes earmarked with expectations, that's not love. That's an arrangement. That's a contract. Okay, I'll give you this, you give me that. That is an exchange of goods, man. That's not love. Romantic act. That is not love. You can't make love. You choose love. It's been corrupted. That word has been so polluted, diluted, and spun around. And I'll tell you the biggest lie in the world, love is love. No, it is not. There's people in this room who've been taught all their life in school that homosexual love is love. It is not love. It is perversion. And honestly, it is so heartbreaking. They have no idea. Think about that. My generation, the millennial generation, I graduated high school in 2008. If they were born between 2003 and 2010, if they're in high school now, they're taught this stuff. Culture is like invading them. And then they're going to argue with you that you're wrong about it because it's been so ingrained in their minds. Man, I wish they taught Ruth and Naomi in school. I wish they taught this is love. Love isn't Jimmy and Tanya, quarterback, cheerleader, right? That's not love. That's expected. Love happens in the unexpected. Love is unexpected. What Ruth and Naomi did for each other was unexpected. And like I said before, love begets love, which leads to here. Ruth goes to Boaz. Naomi tells her, wash, put on perfume and oil, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz know you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. We're in Ruth chapter 3, by the way, verses 6 through 9. When Boaz lays down, notice the place where he's lying. Go and uncover his feet. Lie down. Then he will explain to you what you should do. So Ruth said to her, I'll do everything you say. Honored her. She went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had charged her to do. After Boaz ate and drank, he was in good spirits. He went to lie down at the end of the pile of barley. And she came secretly, uncovered his feet, and she laid down. At midnight, Boaz was startled, and he turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, Who are you? I am Ruth, your servant. She replied, Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. Love isn't a response. It's a choice. Brings me to my last point, love and redemption. Boaz told Ruth, he's like, I will do it. But there's someone closer to you. There's a closer family relative. And so Boaz went to the family relative. He asked him, he's like, will you take Naomi and then take her daughter-in-law Ruth as your wife? And he's like, I can't. I already have a wife. And so he declines. And so everything sets up for Boaz to become the redeemer of Naomi and Elimelech and their family's name and all the properties that are attached to them, which probably was not much. And so Boaz, after this happens, he has this conversation to all the people, and this is Ruth chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Boaz said to the elders and to all the people, you are witnesses today that I am buying from Naomi everything that belonged to Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, to perpetuate the deceased man's name on his property, so that his name will not disappear among his relatives or from the gate of his hometown. You are witnesses today. In that moment, publicly, Boaz says, this woman, her husband, and their family's name, I will redeem it. Out of their deepest hurt, their darkest shame, all of this stuff that they had been through, they had a family redeemer. You know, what's so beautiful about this story is the connection to Jesus. So, Boaz and Ruth had a son. His name was Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David, the slayer of giants, the king of Israel. You see, our Redeemer, our family Redeemer, came from the lineage of David. Boaz's choice to love preserved the line and the lineage of David, which led to Jesus. Jesus, our redemption. You see, redemption has very many meanings, but there's three that I really want to hit on. Redemption, it could simply mean to buy back or repurchase. It's the freeing of distresses that harm us. It's an act of restoration. You see, the kinsman redeemer we see in Boaz is a direct picture of Jesus for us. Can you imagine that? In every single one of our lives, there's going to be a moment There's going to be a moment, you might be alone, you might be sitting in a crowd of people, but there's going to be a moment where you and Jesus just have a little bit of a talk. And in that moment, something crazy happens. Some people call it you get this feeling of peace. Some people call it you get this feeling of I don't know what to do. Some people can't even sit still. But when you have a direct interaction with the Redeemer of your heart, the Savior of your soul, you're not the same after. And you'll know it because you won't be the same. John 3:16 says this. I love the way the CSB words this. It says, "For God loved the world in this way. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life." It's the most famous verse in the history of the world. You see signs still, sporting events, baseball games, you see people holding up signs. John 3:16. But you see today, that verse that some of you have probably heard all of your life is an invitation. As I close today, I just have this final question for you. Just as Boaz covered Ruth with the foot of his garment, will you let Jesus cover you with his garment today? Maybe you just need him to come into those places in your heart you've closed off. It's too much pain, God. I don't want to let you into that. There's too much history there. I don't want to feel that again. I don't want to drudge that up. Maybe you've never let him in at all. Today's your day. Maybe you're fighting it right now. Do me a favor, don't fight it. Don't fight it. Don't let a moment pass. Each of us in our lives, we're designed and created in the image of God. There's not one thing about you that is not eternal in its nature. We were designed for communion with the Father. Let yourself commune with God today. Let love have a chance in your heart. This is a love beyond any love you will ever be able to comprehend. It's okay because his ways are higher, his thoughts are higher than ours. Don't let your past hurt or shame keep you from the future God has for you. We saw the redemption of a future that was birthed out of the deepest hurt and deepest pain one can experience on earth in Ruth and Naomi when Boaz redeemed their family. Well, if Boaz can do that much, imagine what Jesus can do for you. I'll tell you one thing. It'll blow your mind. Hey, will you stand with me this morning? So here in this moment, we're getting ready to have an opportunity to respond. I just want to encourage you. Don't let moments like these go by. I know it's something we do every week. But these are moments for you. These are moments for all of us to have an encounter with Jesus. Like I said, maybe it's just there's a piece of you that you haven't completely let him into yet. Maybe you haven't let him in at all. Don't let it go by. Let's pray together.